Hey, what's up everyone? In this video, I want to share with you how you can get over that fear of overwhelm, that paralysis that comes from trying to become a master at too many different things. How do you juggle all these different interests and skills that you want to get good at? Maybe you don't want to be a master, but you feel like you're overwhelmed by all the noise, all these different things that you can tackle. And here's an example, because you're not alone. A lot of people suffer with this, and I do too. So I want to share with you a example from my own life, and then I'm going to turn to some experts and world-class people on how they solved this and how they became really good at what they're good at. So here's something from my own life. First and foremost, this is a very standard common thing. You want to be really good at fitness, but you also want to be really good at fashion, and also you want to be really good at, say, writing, and you also want to be good at leadership and public speaking, and you want to earn a lot of money, and all these different things. So those are actually all skill sets that I have been tempted at one point or other, oftentimes at the same time. So the first big tip that I have to give to you is that first and foremost, you don't have to be world class at everything. I think a lot of people make this mistake. When you see someone who's like really successful at all these different areas, you see this, maybe it's an actor, and you look at that person and you think, my goodness, he's ripped, he's muscular, he dresses really well, he's rich as well. I mean, he's got his whole life covered, plus he can do, martial arts, and it's just like craziness. So here's how I structure all these different interests, because you're not alone if you have multiple interests. So for me, I like specifically fitness and exercise. I also am really into I'm getting really into martial arts and mixed martial arts, and I want to be at least decent at fighting and Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu and all that stuff, but I also want to have good fashion, and also want to make money, and I want to have a skill set I'm good at. So you have all these interests, and usually you've probably heard that if you do too many things and you become a jack of all trades, and you're tempted by all these things, you lack focus, and all of a sudden you're stretched in too many directions and you don't accomplish anything, and you never succeed at anything. So here's the first mindset shift, or it's really just information that you're usually not aware of. You don't have to be that good at most of these things. Oftentimes you're trying to be good at them because you want to accomplish some goal. For example, most people want to get fit because they want to look good for the opposite gender. And so here's the rule that I came up with that really explains everything in mathematic terms. I call it the rule of 75%. And it's really simple. Everything you just need to be moderately above average at, and that usually doesn't take too long. And then just choose one thing that you want to be world class at, and this is almost always the thing that you're going to be making a living off of, the skill set where you're going to actually make money from. So let's put this into play. And the reason why it works is because you get diminishing returns with all those other things. And usually your goals for all those other skill sets are to a point where you can get good enough, and you're usually only in the 75th percentile, which means that there's still 25% of people in the world who are better at you at that skill set. And when there's 10 billion people in the world and probably hundreds of millions who practice your skill set, that still means that there's millions, even tens of millions, who are potentially better at you at that. There may be people more muscular. There may be people who can, do mixed martial arts better than you, who can dress better, who can talk more articulately, or are more charismatic, whatever it is. However, you're good enough to the point where the extra gain you get from going from 75% to 80% or 95 percentile, it's a very minuscule compared to going from average or below average to where you are now. You've gotten most of the gains. And so there's actually been studies done to prove this law of diminishing returns. For example, if you, I did some research on scientific studies of female attractiveness and physique and vice versa. And what they found, long story short, is that males highly overestimate how muscular they have to be in order to be attractive. In fact, you hit a point very quickly where it starts going downhill, where you become too muscular and it becomes a turnoff. And so the best illustration of this is to look at the muscular nature of a female magazine or female movies male lead, and compare that to what males watch. So compare that to a male fitness magazine or a masculine action movie geared towards males like The Expendables or something like that. And you'll notice that the physique of the lead male player is a lot different than to the male demographics, medium of choice. And so you can see that difference in perception. You want to sculpt your figure to look how the lead of the female medium of choice is. So if you look at these people, it's usually someone who is not that muscular. Like you can barely see their six pack. Maybe there's some definition there, but they're not like massively ripped with like 20-inch arms. They're moderately in proportion. So what that means is good news for you. It means that you don't have to like kill yourself to become world class and in the top 1% of 1% of the most muscular people in the world. And a lot of males hit a point where they're exerting all this effort for very little extra gains because they're already so muscular. And that's where they really need to switch to other areas and develop those, but they don't. They instead, and this is what a lot of people do, they use their area of strength as a crutch, and they never fix their weaknesses, which actually is really useful, and it works really well in business or as a career or a job, but not always in dating, or and it doesn't always work if your weaknesses are so bad that they detract. So I've gotten a little bit off track with my ramblings, but to bring it back on track, let's put it to a concrete example just to illustrate the whole thing once over for you. So in my life, what I try and do is I try and be more fashionable than the average person. Again, 75%. That's moderately above average. And so that only takes maybe 6 months of watching fashion videos on YouTube or reading men's fashion blogs. 6 months, maybe an hour a week. Maybe it'll take up to a year, but it's not like one of those things where, you're a concert pianist and you have to spend 5 hours a day practicing for 10 years to reach 10,000 hours of practice to be able to compete on a world-class stage. You don't have to do that. You just need 6 months. And your goal is simply to go from below average or poor to moderately above average. And if you can do that and raise that for multiple areas of your life, it will do wonders, especially in the dating realm. Of course, on top of that, on top of fitness, there's also on top of fitness, there's fashion, and both work the same. So for fitness, of course, it'll probably take more than 6 months. It may take maybe 2 to 5 years of consistent training, but my goal is to hit a moderately muscular physique in a similar manner, where of course it's far from hitting the point where I can compete in Mr. Olympia or any bodybuilding competition, and it's far from hitting the top 1% of bodybuilders or muscular people in the world or in the country, but it is more than good enough based on statistics. It's the law of diminishing returns. So it's really good for you because it means that you can let go of the false belief that you need to be world class or in the top 1% in all these different domains. So outside of fitness and fashion, of course, the other big pillars I could say that I applied this to are really only maybe my humor. So being able to be funny is really important as well, and it displays intelligence, mental health, and it's one of the top things that many women look for. So being able to be moderately above average funny is also something that can be worked on. And of course, I don't need to train myself to become world class like some of the top comedians in the world. Some of the top comedians in the world are being paid millions upon millions of dollars every year to do stand-up comedy. Having said that, though, they have spent their whole lives training it and split testing different lines at thousands of different comedy events, from a local bar to a stadium full of people. You don't need to spend your whole life doing that like concert pianists. You don't need that level of humor. You just need to be moderately funny. Right now, I'm below average. I cannot really tell a joke like that to save my life to really, do anything about that. So by just, making those tweaks from below average to above average, which I would estimate would take, 2 years of decent effort, maybe going to, do some practice, reading up on, how-to comedy books, that can really take a serious dent and improve my progress. So you can kind of see how these play out. And of course, I guess the last thing I think may need similar work is maybe mixed martial arts or I don't know, social skills. So both of those, again, you don't need to be the most world-class socially elite speaker in the world. You don't need to be a master networker like Ariana Huffington, where she's literally has so many connections that she can literally meet with any celebrity. You don't need that level of social skills. But for me, I need to get from average to maybe 70, even 80, the 80th percentile, because I want to be enough above average to a point where I'm seen as rare and valuable and good at these things, and where I hit that point of diminishing returns, where it's like you can spend just as much time as you spent and you only get this much more results from it. So that's an example of how it can play out. And the last thing I want to leave you with is just as crucial. I got this from this book called Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss. It's this book where he interviews hundreds of the world's game changers. I have it right here. And some of these people are Olympic athletes, world chess champions, and billionaires. And this one piece of advice really stuck with me from the book. And he pretty much gives their advice after he interviews them. And he says, and the advice is, don't be a donkey. Now, on that own, it doesn't make sense, but it comes with a story. So here's the story in a nutshell. So there's a donkey, and he sees a bunch of hay on one side and a bunch of water on the other side. And he can't make up his mind on where to go. So he ends up staying in the middle, looking back and forth. And he dies from starvation. So why does that apply to the real world? Well, it applies specifically to, all these temptations, because his whole point about this donkey story is that you usually have enough time in your life to be able to become a master of more than one skill set. However, what most of us do is we dabble and jump between all these different skill sets on a daily, weekly, even hourly basis, to the point where we cannot focus enough on one to succeed. If you just spent 2 to 3 years, that's not a lifetime. I mean, most of us will live into our 80s, 90s, and hundreds. If you just spent 2 or 3 years, which is just a small fraction of your life, focusing on one thing, then you can get to the other thing. If that donkey had just decided to spend, 2 or 3 seconds to drink the water first and then go to the hay, he would have realized that in the long term, he could have had both. But his, fear of missing out and his indecision left, his fear of, taking one and not be able to get the other left him in the middle, confused, overwhelmed, and paralyzed, which led to his starvation. So in a similar way, if you don't want to starve, and if you don't want to fail and not be able to succeed and be successful in life, you have to focus on one. So I just choose one thing to focus at a time. And for me, there's only one thing that I want to be world class at in the world, because that's usually where I want to make the money, make my career, make the focus of most of my day, because that's how you become world class at something. And so for me, I chose that as business, and specifically I chose marketing as the sub niche in that big area of business. And some would say that's not focused enough. I would have to choose something specifically in marketing to focus deeper in, direct response marketing. And so that's what my kind of focus is. But what's your focus? And another thing is, if you look at certain successful people, that's exactly what they did. For example, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was a millionaire before he even became an actor. Now, how did he do that? Well, before he was a millionaire, he was a successful bodybuilder. He was Mr. Olympia. Well, how did he do that? Well, for many years, he just focused on becoming Mr. Olympia. That was his number one goal. Nothing else happened. He didn't try and become an actor and a bodybuilder and a millionaire at the same time. But after he won Mr. Olympia, then he transitioned over for 3 to 5 years in real estate. And he got into real estate because it was an industry that was full of opportunities at the time. And he spent several years just focusing on real estate, and he became a millionaire at real estate. And he did this very strategically, because now he had that safety net, unlike all the other actors there. So he was more calmer and more at ease during the auditions, because he knew that he didn't have to depend on acting to get by. So after he had succeeded in real estate, then he went on to become an actor. And you can see that it wasn't this crazy level of focus where on a daily basis he was juggling 15 different goals. So in a similar manner, I think this is very insightful. Don't try and do all these different goals at the same time. in the same day. Don't be like, you know what, I want to be really fit and muscular, and I also want to be really fashionable, and I want to be an actor, and I also want to be a top mixed martial arts athlete, and I want to be a CEO and a musician. Because guess what? You're going to be stretched in all these directions and not do well. But if you can focus really hard in one area for a while, you just might find that once you succeed in that area to your level of satisfaction, you will have time to move on to another area of interest if that is what you want. Some people just prefer staying in one area. So I think that's really important, and a lot of people kind of lose that focus, myself included. And I found it very valuable to get that information from the book Tools of Titans. So really cool stuff here, and I really think that the Law of 75 will take you far. So check it out. Again, the Law of 75 is something that I kind of came up. It's kind of my own theory, but there's actually a lot of truth and science behind it. So thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video. Hope it helped.